In this episode, we're diving into Ashley Ray's theory, a perspective shared by a fellow community member on Reddit that questions the validity of the intruder theory in the JonBenet Ramsey case. Ashley's post on Reddit highlights the inconsistencies and the gaps in the idea of an unknown assailant or intruder, more so leaning towards the Burke did it theory and reflecting on the possibility that John Ramsey had some involvement in it as well, or was the main perpetrator. This is all alleged. And from here forth, we're looking at dramatizations of possibilities that what it might look like. So her take doesn't just challenge the intruder narrative. It opens up deeper questions about the family's actions, the evidence left behind, and how these elements connect or don't to an external perpetrator. What makes this theory especially interesting is the reaction that it sparked, particularly on the part of John Andrew Ramsey, who is, as you know, JonBenet's half-brother. He caught wind of Ashley's post and publicly called it nonsense by retweeting it with some criticism of his own. This response not only brought Ashley's theory into a bigger spotlight, but also raised eyebrows in the true crime community on why such a strong reaction to a Reddit post. I mean, after all, there's hundreds, thousands of Reddit posts, possibly even millions. And so a response to a single Reddit post, obviously this is one that may have come up, but to take the time to read it, because it's very lengthy. What does that say about the ongoing tension, though, between the public speculation and the Ramsey family's narrative, right? So we're going to be unpacking Ashley's points in detail, everything from the pineapple evidence to the strange dynamics around the ransom note, and looking at how her arguments stack up against the intruder theory. And along the way, we'll sort of reflect on why this case remains so polarizing even decades later, and what makes theories like Ashley's continue to resonate with those trying to piece together the truth of what happened that night. And possibly I'll make this a series to kind of, go through everything. And I'll also link in my bio her Reddit posts so that you guys can kind of see the post on Reddit and then see her Substack channel and kind of read it for yourselves and let me know what you think. So here we go. So the first point that she dives into is sort of the lack of intruder evidence. She challenges the plausibility of an intruder scenario by highlighting the anomalies within the crime scene that are inconsistent with typical intruder behavior. For instance, the presence of a bowl of pineapple with Burke's fingerprints on it. She seems to suggest here that JonBenet may have had a late night snack, possibly in the company of her brother. Now, while Burke's fingerprints don't necessarily have to tie to JonBenet being present, what it does do is it does throw into question the timeline just off of first thought. But secondly, when we think deeper about the presence of JonBenet and how it ties to JonBenet, also thinking about this being in the possibly in the company of her brother, JonBenet had undigested pineapple in her stomach. That's undeniable. That's irrefutable, right? Even though Patsy denies it, it was in her stomach, undigested. And so this would tie JonBenet to the company of her brother for a late night snack, being up past the time in which she was said to have been in bed sleep. So moving on, she goes on to say that if there is an intruder, it makes no sense for the pineapple, the urine stain outside of the cellar, or the feces to occur. Why would they make a snack and leave such odd traces? This perspective implies that such domestic traces are more indicative of a family member's actions rather than an unknown intruder. To support this skepticism, other external news sources have noted the absence of definitive signs of forced entry. According to a report by Bustle, the broken window in the basement, often cited as a potential entry point for an intruder, was found to have undisturbed cobwebs, which suggests that it hadn't been used recently and therefore couldn't be used for an entry point for the intruder. The article states that the case remains unsolved, but a broken window in the Ramsey house offers more clues related to the intruder theory. Furthermore, the Ransom note's peculiarities raise doubts about the intruder theory itself. The note was unusually long and written on paper from the Ramsey's household itself, which would have required significant time to compose. The author of the article expresses disbelief here by saying something to the effect of, "I couldn't stand the thought of people believing the stun gun theory either. It has been debunked a million times." This sentiment by Ashley reflects the general frustrations with the community, with explanations that seem to not only stretch plausibility, but are in often cases inconceivable. Additionally, the behavior of the Ramseys on the morning of December 26th of 1996 has been heavily scrutinized. The family's decision to invite friends over before the police arrived led to, of course, contamination of the crime scene, which further complicated the investigation, something the Ramseys will take no fault on. And thus, the critics of this argue that such actions are inconsistent with those of innocent parents dealing with an intruder's crime. That is, why contaminate a crime scene and get your messy hands all over it instead of just allowing the police to handle it and do their job? Further strange behavior, as pointed out by other news sources, is the fact that when unsealed, we find that the grand jury actually wanted to indict the Ramseys on 4 counts related to not necessarily being the perpetrators themselves, but assisting or covering up for someone who had actually done this, was, I believe, the exact language. So, for example, in this first case, they knowingly, as the grand jury put it, permitted a child to be in a situation that was unreasonable and led to death. In this second case, again, unlawfully, knowingly, and feloniously rendering assistance to a person with the intent to hinder, delay, and prevent the discovery. Another third count, again, knowingly, recklessly, and feloniously, again pointing to the fact that there was involvement to cover up as the grand jury saw it, right? So we're not talking about what the news did or what the Boulder police did, as is often driven and pushed by John in interviews and things of that nature, and depositions and stuff like that. This is the grand jury looking at the evidence that is available to them in the town of Boulder, Colorado at the time, 1996, 1997, I believe, and saying, hey, look, we believe that you guys had something to do with this in the manner of a cover-up, blocking out all of the noise. We believe that you had something to do with this in the manner of the cover-up. And so, as we bring this video to a close, the lack of concrete evidence supporting an intruder's presence, combined with the domestic traces and the family's actions, we look at all these things together, and according to Ashley, and I think I would have to agree to this point, these seem to cast significant doubt on the intruder theory itself. Furthermore, if we close out by saying that the article and external sources collectively suggest that the crime scene's peculiarities align more closely with internal involvement, as we see that the grand jury is saying, rather than an external perpetrator. And that's the video. I'm going to move next into sort of the fabrication of the stun gun theory and her thoughts on that next. And then after that, I'll probably talk a little bit about the misleading of the Netflix documentary in her perception. There are some of you who have mentioned other creators who have had their thoughts on the Netflix documentary. I can't remember the gentleman's name right now. His name was Andrew, and he's a MD and he's a psychiatrist. And I went and looked at his video on the Netflix documentary at the suggestion of some of you guys. And it was funny because I watched it and he had to stop the documentary in the middle of it and just go in on some DNA evidence. So if you have a chance, check the guy out. I think it's Andrew Van Art or something like that. I'll get the name for you. His exact name is Andrew van der Vaart, and the last name is kind of spelled VanderVaart. Again, he is an MD, PhD psychiatrist, I believe, and he is here on YouTube. He has a channel, so check him out. Pretty funny video. So, but that's the video. Thanks for watching. As I said before, we're going to continue to dive into this and break it down piece by piece. And I'm going to dive into my theories about some of the break-offs here, especially with respect to the pineapple and stuff like that. I'm going to just break off myself and try to work through some theories that I have as well. But until next video, thanks for watching and take it easy.